Member for Banks.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, I can't believe that those opposite have actually chosen to discuss the issue of tax for today's MPI, because as I understand the MPI, the idea of it is for oppositions to raise issues that they think are favourable to them. And on tax, the opposition's policies are absolutely appalling, and there are so many examples to run through. It is a very, very odd strategic choice. And I know the Shadow Treasurer has had a rough few weeks. He's been sort of fluffing around on the bank tax, effectively running the lines of the banks and really failing to make any headway there. And maybe he said, look, we'll have the MPI about tax, it'll be really good for us. And that was a very, very bad miscalculation, Deputy Speaker, because the Labor Party's policies on tax, I say, are appalling. One of my personal favourites of Labor's appalling policies is this extraordinary policy on capital gains tax they have, Deputy Speaker. Now, you'll recall they said that because of the housing affordability issues in Sydney and Melbourne, that what they want to do is raise capital gains tax by 50% on everything. So the Labor Party, those opposite, propose to increase capital gains tax by 50% on everything, not just housing investment, investment in farms, investment in factories, investment in cafes. They say increase tax on all of those investments by 50% because of issues to do with housing affordability in Sydney and Melbourne. Now, that is an extraordinarily stupid policy, Deputy Speaker, and the impact of it would be to reduce investment, which is the last thing we want. What we want is more investment, particularly in small and medium business, Deputy Speaker. And so we say let's reduce the rate of company tax for small and medium-sized businesses from 30% to 25%, and happily, Deputy Speaker, the Senate agreed. The Senate, to its credit, supported that legislation. But what those opposites say is no, that is bad legislation, and that should not be allowed to occur for businesses with turnover of more than $2 million. So what that means, Deputy Speaker, and this is very, very clear, those opposite are advocating a $30 billion tax increase on small and medium-sized businesses in Australia. And if that's not right, if my characterisation of that is not right, I would welcome any of the members on the opposition benches to say so, or perhaps the Shadow Treasurer could come into the chamber and say that that's not the case, that the opposition would not be increasing tax on small and medium-sized business by $30 billion if elected. But he won't do that because that's their policy. Because you can't oppose a tax increase without supporting a tax decrease, without supporting a tax increase, and that's what they do. They also think that businesses with more than $2 million of revenue are not small, and I think a lot of them over there, Deputy Speaker, don't understand the difference between revenue and profit. Because, of course, Deputy Speaker, there might be a business with revenue of, say, $2 million, but its profit margin might be 3 or 4%. There's a lot of small businesses with very, very small profit margins. So that business with $2 million of turnover might in fact be making $100,000 or less, so it might be making the average wage. Labor says that is a vast corporation which must be treated in a different way to small businesses, and as a consequence should not be allowed to claim the $20,000 instant asset write-off. And that's just an absurd policy, because plainly those small businesses between $2 and $10 million need that support. It's a very effective policy, the instant asset write-off. It encourages investment in local communities, and those opposites say it's a bad idea, again betraying their lack of understanding of this area. Now, Deputy Speaker, we also know that they oppose the government's sensible measure to fully fund the NDIS through an increase in the Medicare levy. They left us with this $55 billion hole in the NDIS system, and they say if someone is earning $85,000, they should not be asked to contribute to the National Disability Insurance Scheme funding, but if someone's earning $87,000, they should. So someone earning $87,000 is apparently rich and able to contribute, and someone earning $85,000 or $86,000 is not. It's not, and that's an absurd policy, Deputy Speaker. It makes no sense at all, and it's entirely appropriate for all Australians to contribute. And we know, of course, their failure on the multinational tax legislation, where they shamefully voted against the legislation which the government has passed, which is already raised more than $2 billion. So very bad choice to raise this issue, as it's a great vulnerability for the opposition, a great strength for the government, Deputy Speaker.